Who is God? It's something a lot of people struggle with. They struggle to know him, to understand him, to abide in him, to love him, to be loved by him. But who is he? Who is it? Right? A lot of people think of God as this mythical being, kind of like Zeus, sitting up on a storm cloud with a lightning bolt and just hurling lightning bolts or judgment on people. Or some people see him as that, as a judge, as somebody that's just standing with a set of scales, just weighing your life and judging every decision that you make. And you feel this immense pressure weighing down on you to measure up to God's scales. Some people think of God as like this police officer just waiting to catch you in the act, just waiting to throw you behind bars, and he's always out to get you, and you can't run from him. And all of those descriptions of God are fear-based. They're grounded in fear, in not biblical fear, not fear of the Lord, but being afraid, being scared. That's not who God is. God is our Father. I know that sounds kind of weird. You're like, oh, you're our Father. No, he is. God is the Father of all. First line in the Bible, in the beginning, God created. That is what he is. He is the creator of everything. Now, whether or not you believe that is not so much an issue with God, but with you, right? We have the Big Bang Theory. We have evolution. We have all of these theories that are out there. And to me, explaining something with only science and no God is missing the point. Just like explaining something without what we know as science is also hard to understand, right? Because what if they're the same? What if the Big Bang was God? I don't know. I can't take a position on that because I wasn't there and none of us were. That's why they're all called theories. The Big Bang Theory, the theory of evolution. They're scientific terms that means not proven. A lot of people will agree. That doesn't mean that it's fact. A theory is just that. They're our best guess. And the reason that they're theories, one is we weren't there, and two is because we're trying to explain unbelievable supernatural phenomena without somebody doing it, right? I heard this, you might have heard this before. It's a really old analogy for it, but let's say you walk into your kitchen and you walk in and there's a mess of flour and cracked eggs and bowls that are dirty, and there's evidence of somebody baking in the room, and you walk in and set in the middle of the table is a beautiful cake, birthday cake, wedding cake, whatever it is, just the most beautiful cake you've ever seen. Explaining science, explaining the Big Bang Theory, explaining creation and evolution and all of these things without somebody doing it, without divine intervention, without intelligent design, explaining that would be like walking into that kitchen and being like, over millions of years, by accident, on its own, with no help, those eggs came out, cracked themselves, fell into the bowl. The flour poured itself in the perfect mixture into the bowl. Everything mixed itself. Everything cracked itself, opened itself, moved itself, came to the bowl, poured itself in, mixed itself, threw itself accidentally into the oven, and turned it onto the right temperature. And you see where I'm going with this. That's what we're doing by eliminating God from the equation, is saying everything happened by accident. To be completely perfect, the design that is right now just happened by accident with nobody doing it. And people brag about believing that. Instead of walking in and going, wow, look at this amazing cake. Who made it? It must have been a really skilled baker for them to have made this the way that they did. I would like to meet the baker that made this. Why is the latter so hard to believe for people? Just because you've never met the person? Just because you can't see the baker? Is that what the issue is? Is just because your finite understanding is going to limit your belief? When you look at things like the spacing of the sun and the moon, I was with the lunar eclipse here recently. People were talking about the incredible coincidence that the spacing of the moon from the earth and the moon from the sun, and it was perfect, and it's such a coincidence. Why can't we just say that it was placed there? Why is that so hard? Because you've never met the person that placed it there? What if I was to tell you stories about my dad? I could tell you amazing stories about the houses that he built with his own hands and the fish that he used to catch and bring home. And I could tell you amazing stories about how he treated me when I was young and how the relationship I have with him now that he's older and that I'm older. And I could tell you amazing stories, and you would probably love to sit and listen to those stories about my dad. But you've never met him. So why would you believe them? How do you know that I even have a dad? How do you know that any of my stories are actually true? You don't. but I do. I know that my stories are true, and I know my dad. And just because you don't doesn't make him any less real. That is the God of the universe. He is real. He did create. How he did it, whether he big banged or evolution or monkeys or all, I don't care. I don't care how he did it. All I care is that he did. And it's good. It was until we ruined it. We'll get to that in a different video. But God is the creator. And whether or not you know him yet, that's a formality. Because I used to be just like you. Didn't believe, wasn't sure, heard so many different variations of it that I wasn't sure myself. And it wasn't until I was an adult. I was actually raised in the church, brought up in it, knew all the stories, memorized verses, sang all the songs, and then had my quintessential prodigal son moment where I was like, yeah, okay, I'm done with all that. I don't need the church and the building and the weird people and the sayings. And I don't need that. I'm going to go do my own thing. And I did, and went and had a fine life. So I thought, but empty, just like the prodigal son, very empty, very not what I wanted. We'll put it that way. I didn't end up in a good place. And like the prodigal son, I came back to myself, and I started going to church, started listening to the word, started actually listening, not just memorizing scripture and singing songs I was told to, but actually listening to what they were saying and actually reading the book that they were talking out of, and got baptized at the age of 26. And I can tell you my entire life changed after that, because I felt God for the first time. Not as a distant figure, not as a mythical storybook creation, but I felt him. And I can't explain that to you. The same way that I can't tell you what it's like to be hugged by my dad. I can explain it a number of different ways, but you'll never know. Maybe you didn't have a good relationship with your dad. Maybe you never knew your dad. Maybe your dad gave amazing hugs, and listening to me talk about my dad's hugs, you're like, yeah, okay, but I got my own. Like, I can't explain my dad to you in a way that would make you know him, the same way that I can't explain God to you in a way that would make you know him. You just have to believe. That's the faith. That's the trust that he is. That's all I can tell you is God is. What gender is he? I don't know. We use male gender because that's what was in there, but I've also been told that he is being. That's just what he is. He is an entity. Is he a male? Remains to be seen. Don't know. What does he look like? Can't tell you. Where does he live? Heaven, from what I've been told? I don't know. So these are the questions people get tied up in rather than just knowing him. If I started telling you stories about my dad, you're like, yeah, where does he live? Yeah, what does he look like? And before I listen to your story about your dad's fishing and building houses and hugs, I'm going to need to know his exact height and weight and what he looks like. And I need to see a picture of him, and I need to see where he lived. You wouldn't do that. But why do we do it with this? Why do we do it with him? It's our own lack of understanding that holds us up. So then we start to believe in actual fairy tales, in the fact that something billions of years ago happened that we don't know, that we can't explain. Might have happened, might not, just up for debate on exactly how. We get tied up in semantics, just the same as we get tied up in semantics about God. Why not just look around at what we have and believe and go, wow, this is incredible. But no, we're going to get caught up in semantics and then fight, and we'll go over that in a different video too. Point of this video is God is. He said it himself when he introduced himself to Moses, and Moses asked for his name. He goes, what shall I say your name is? Who sent me? And God just goes, I am. That's all they need to know. And you got to know that Egypt had all of their different gods that they worship for all different things, sun and sky and moon and harvest and all of this. And God's just like, I am. That's it. They aren't, and they know that. They know that the statues they're praying to are not really there, but I am. And that's all you need to know about God, is that he is the creator of the universe. He actually does exist, and he does want a relationship with you. But the biggest thing that I want to talk about is that he's not just an angry thunderbolt, lightning striking, fierce God. He is not just a judge that sits with his robe waiting to condemn you. He is not a police officer waiting to arrest you. He is not a disappointed, jaded, angry, drunk dad like, a lot of people apply their own father figures on God. He's not human. He's not fallible. He is Father, which is something that it took me a long time to understand. We talk about God the Father. You might have heard our Father that art in heaven. We'll talk about Heavenly Father. It's just words. I used to pray repetitively because that's what I was taught as a kid, is I would start every prayer with Heavenly Father, Heavenly Father, Heavenly Father. And I never really put any thought into it. But he is. In the Old Testament, back when God didn't have a relationship with his people, he was called Father, but it was Father of nations. He was Father of all. He was the leader, the Father of nations. And it wasn't until the New Testament when Jesus referred to him almost 200 times as Father. We'll get to that because that's important in our next video talking about Jesus. But Jesus was trying to get across to us that we'd missed the mark already. By the time Jesus came on the scene, we'd already missed the mark about who God was, because people only saw him as judge, condemner, police officer, angry. They didn't know him as dad. Jesus is going, no, you're missing it. He is Father first. In the same way that your dad would punish you if he needed to, would reprimand you if he needed to. Just because your dad reprimands you, punishes you, any of those things doesn't make him first and foremost a punisher. He's your dad. And all the other things come in line with being dad depending on how you act. That's a father figure. But if you go all the way back to Genesis, you go back to the very beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, very first line, and you go forward from there. Look at the story of people. Look at the story of creation. Look at the Old Testament as a father and his children. Start there. And I know a lot of you have probably been jaded by church and how things have been said, and there's a lot of mistrust there and confusion, so we're starting over with this. Start with God had kids. That's it. That is the beginning. God created the heavens and the earth. Know that. How did he do it? Don't know. I wasn't there, but he did. I can tell you that. The next thing he did after creating everything was he had kids, because that is his end goal, is not to be this alone judge, sky god just floating around in infinity forever alone. That's not his point. He wants community. He wants family. So he did what any of us would do, is we have kids to create a family. He did that. In the very beginning, Adam and Eve are nothing more than babies. Spiritual babies, literal babies. He created them fully grown. So they had no childhood. They had no actual growing up to do. They were adult babies. I don't know if we ever think about it like that. He had to walk with them, teach them how to do things, talk with them. They weren't clothed, so they were just running around naked and just doing whatever they wanted to like babies. And God was right there with them. Then they graduated to like almost toddler, right? When they act out. They act of their own accord. They make their own decisions. They sin. There was only one rule in the Garden of Eden. He gave them a bunch of yes. The Bible talks about, he says, go and be fruitful and multiply. And you can eat of any tree, anything. You can do all that you want. You can be and do and have all of the fun. Just don't do one thing. And now he sounds just like a dad. Just like I would say to my kids, don't do this one thing. People ask, why did God put it there? Why did he allow the tree of knowledge of good and evil to be a stumbling block? Why would he put that there if he was trying to create paradise? That's people get mixed up. He wasn't creating paradise on earth. Paradise is in heaven. There's a reason he created this semi-paradise on earth, was not to be paradise, because he knew that he gave these babies free will. He knew that he had to test them to make sure they were actually loyal. See, God doesn't want drones. He wants clones. And a drone, if he just wanted something with no free will that couldn't sin and couldn't act out and just always said yes and I love you and that's it, then that misses the mark, doesn't it? Do you want your kids to do that? Nobody does. Nobody wants just this robotic, autonomous, unthoughtful, no, we don't want that. We want freedom. That's what, that's the whole point of children, is for them to grow into their own people. So we put it in there as a test. That's the whole point of it. The same way, like you would leave a cookie on a counter and say, don't eat that, and you walk away. Will they? I don't know. That's up to how you've raised the children, isn't it? But sometimes, like with the tree, the cookie is not a good example. This is a better example. The tree is a warning. Like a hot stove is a better one. That's an easy one. Turn the stove on, it's red hot. I have a 5-year-old daughter right now, and I tell her all the time when the stove's on, hey, the stove is on, don't touch it. And she kind of rolls her eyes now at this point. She's like, okay, Dad, I get it, I know. But I've had to instill that in her because children are children, and she can't see what she doesn't know what she doesn't know. She can't see. She might just accidentally touch it. And that's terrible. So I have to explain it to her. The stove is hot. It will really hurt you. Please don't touch it. But we all know kids, and sometimes kids just want to know what they can't have. I want to touch it. He keeps talking about it. I want to see what it does. If I'm not allowed to, why? Let me see what's going on. And they'll touch it just because. That's what the tree of knowledge of good and evil was he put it not off to the side. He didn't hide it. It wasn't off in the perimeter. It wasn't outside of the garden where it would be harder to get to. He put it in an easy to reach place right in the center of the garden where they could always see it. It was always present. No matter where they walked, it was probably always visible or easy to get to on purpose. Because it was a test, because he wanted them to follow and listen. Of course, they didn't. Like toddlers, they touched the stove. They took the cookie. They're like, let's try this out. Let's see what's going on. And from then on, the relationship was fractured, but in the same normal way that kids are fractured from their parents, right? My daughter's 5 years old. I don't have to do as much for her anymore. I don't have to get her dressed. I don't have to make some of the food. She's able to make some foods on her own and get them and open them. She's able to get herself in and out of a car. She's able to buckle herself. Like there's a lot that she can do now, and she's going to continue to get better at it. The same thing with human people. So when the sin happened and he kicked them out of the garden, we got all tied up in this first sin and Adam and Eve sin and all of this. We don't realize that what we're talking about there is just a toddler. 2 toddlers that did what they weren't supposed to do, and they were punished for it. They were sent to their room. Yes, that echoed over eternity, but look at it in the sense of that's a sad dad. His kids didn't listen. That's all it is. Kids didn't listen. He had to punish them. He had to show them. But what's interesting about that is outside of the garden, once they were expelled, once they were kicked out, everybody acts like that was the end of the relationship. It wasn't, because we know that with Cain and Abel. And when Cain killed Abel, God was still present and walking with them and talking to them. He was still a part of their life. That's what people miss about the first sin in the Garden of Eden. They act like that was the end and we were just on our own from then on out. No, God was present. God was there. He was having face-to-face conversations still with them outside of the garden. So just because they were out of the garden, they were not out of God's presence. And people miss that part. Even in God's presence, still they go a step further. Instead of now just eating fruit, Cain kills, and we have the first murder. So just being in God's presence, so many people are like, oh, if God would just show himself, if God would just appear, show us a sign, I would listen, I would believe. The 2 first people on earth disobeyed him. The next 2 people on earth committed murder in his presence. Just being near him and seeing him doesn't prove anything, because free will, and we are still sinful individuals that are going to do dumb things anyway. Got off on a whole tangent on that. But then murder, right? So eating the apple, murder, and then on it goes through history. And if you read through the Old Testament, it's just God getting pushed further away. First he walked and talked, then he walked and helped, then he gets further away, then he just shows up with Abraham, right? He's not walking all the time with Abraham like he was with Adam and Eve and even Noah even. He didn't like walk and help Noah build the ark. He was talking to him, and he would show up once in a while, kind of like a teenager, right? Do you see your teenager all the time? Do you spend every waking moment with them helping them? No, because they can do most things on their own. You just have to be there for the big stuff. So Noah and Abraham, those are teenage humans, where he would just show up and help them. Hey, I need you to do this. I need you to wash the dishes. I need you to build an ark. That's where we are in this relationship. It's fractured. It's distant. And he's there when he needs them to do something, clean their room, right? Same thing with Abraham. But up to this point, Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, Noah, even while doing what they were created to do and asked to do, they still disappointed him. They still sinned. They still were fallible humans that weren't 100% loyal to him and obedient to him. So when we get to Abraham, so many people get caught up in the taking Isaac out and having him almost kill him kind of a thing. I watched it with my fiance. She turned it off. She's like, I don't want to watch it anymore. What kind of God is this that would do that, that would ask that? I would never. And I'm like, that's the point though, isn't it? He needed to see at that point. You have to know that through Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel, that by the time we get to Abraham, he's like, I have something so big. I need to know that you will actually follow through. That I need to know that I can trust you. Did God want Abraham to actually kill Isaac? Absolutely not. Especially not after waiting all of that time for him to be born and everything that went through to get to him. Of course not. But he needed to know, would Abraham actually do it? And when he saw that, God was probably just as surprised as us, going, whoa, he's going to do it. Stop him. Stop him. All right, he's good. He's good. He passed. That's Abraham. He didn't want him to kill his kid. It's not infanticide. He wanted to know, is this one that's going to get drunk and do stupid things in his tent, or is he going to kill like Cain did, or is he going to eat the apple like Adam and Eve did? Is he one of those, or can I trust him? That's why Abraham is the father of many nations, because he passed the test. God is not into killing children. We'll get into that in a different video too. But that's the teenage version. I need you to do something. I need to know if I can trust you, because I can't do big things with you until I know I can trust you with small things. I need obedience. And then on and on it goes all through the Old Testament. The people get further and further and further away from God. Now we're into like 16-year-olds. Like, leave me alone. I can do it on my own. Leading to exile for hundreds of years, leading to punishments, leading to actual judges, leading to all of the problems that you get through all of the prophets. And the people get further and further and further and further and further away from God. And the whole time they're getting further away, God is still trying to keep relationship with them, and he does it through prophets, and he does it through priests, and he does it through the temple, and he does it through ritual, sacrifices and atonements and all of that. He's still trying to keep that relationship without presence. Think of those of you that have had a 17 or 18-year-old, right? You want that relationship. You're like, be home by 9. Like, I'm an adult. I can do what I want. So you got to put these rules into play. Okay, do this and do that. And we're getting further and further away, but humans as a race are getting older and older, and the Father is losing that connection with them without some kind of ritual, some kind of process, which is not the intention of the relationship with the Father. They weren't created to kill a goat once a year and then be done. That was not the purpose of the Father. And it gets all the way through to Jesus. The reason Jesus had to come was because humans screwed it up. On top of the people getting further and further away from God, on top of the relationship being that fractured, where now you have this 21-year-old that can drink and drive and smoke and they're gone, right? Now you got that kind of a kid. The people that he had put in place in his stead on earth as that mediator, prophets, priests, Pharisees, Sadducees, all of these people were the ones that knew the law. They understood what was supposed to happen, how it was supposed to happen, but they became crooked. And they were fallible, and they started acting as if they were in charge of the law, and they were in charge of salvation, and they knew better than everybody else. And now you had this us versus them, which was not the plan. They were given laws to follow, knowing, of course, they were going to break them because we're human. So he gave them ways to atone, ways to forgive, just the same as a father would. He's trying to keep his children in check, trying to raise them the right way. So he's giving them what we would call maybe babysitters or teachers or people in their lives, but all of a sudden they were ruining it for everybody. And God realized there's only one way to correct this. There's only one way to fix this. The people have gone so far. They're now 21, 25 years old trying to rent their own cars, and they're off being crazy. They're not listening to anything they were taught as kids. They're not following the law. They're not listening to me. The people that are supposed to be in charge of them, helping them listen to me, are now worse and making the people worse. It's out of control. There's only one way to fix this, and that is I have to go down and fix it. And now we're going to get into the next video, who Jesus is, the purpose of Jesus. But that is who God is. God is the creator of the universe. He's the creator of you and me. He's the creator of everything that you can see. He created us as a family to be in unity with him, in community with him. That's been fractured and so far gone now that people, they say that, where's God? Where is he? Why doesn't he talk to us anymore? This was 2,000 years ago that it was so bad he had to come out and do it himself. By that point, the relationship between God and man was so distant that it came down to rituals, which we don't even do anymore because of Jesus. We'll get to that. But that's not how this was intended for. He's up there just as sad about how everything is as you are. He's just as upset over the way that the earth is, maybe even as much as back in Noah. Before he sent the flood, he said he regretted ever even making them. You ever have that feeling as a parent? You ever have your kid act out so bad? Hopefully not, but I know some have. Your kid gets to that point where you go, I wish I never had him. If you have felt that, then you understand the pain of the father. Just multiply it times billions. If you have never felt that about your kids, don't feel happy about it. understand how far he had to get to feel that. That's terrifying. That he had created this thing that in the beginning was good. Everything was good and beautiful and luscious, and it started out so great, and he had that relationship with his kids that he wanted, and it had gotten so not just far away, but so ruined that they went off and they were doing some of the most awful things you could think of that he regretted ever even starting the whole thing. That's who God is. God is your father, and he is sad that he doesn't have a relationship with you. My dad is in his 80s right now. I don't call him as much as I should. I don't visit him as much as I should. He lives in a different state. And when I think of my dad, I think of God. Even though you never met my dad, he is very real, just like God is. But my dad, in a small way, is feeling the pain of the father. Because I don't call him as much as I should. I'm off doing my own thing. I have my own family. I have my own bills. I have my own time. I have my own schedule and pressing matters. And when he does call me, I don't have time for him. Much like God, times billions. That's who he is. He is not up there ready to judge you. He's not up there wanting what's worse for you or to take the fun out of your life. That's not who God is. God just wants a relationship with you, and he wants what's best for you. The same way that I want what's best for my kids and my dad wants what's best for me. So if you don't know God as your father, you'll never know him as creator. You'll never know the love of God. That's how you get to know him, is not believe in God. He created it, so there. That's not what it is. He's your father. He created everything around us, and he wants nothing more than to have all of his children around his table again, the same way that my dad does. And he loves you. The God that created the universe has billions and billions of children across the world and across space and time, and a very, very few of them actually care about him. Are you one of them? If you are, talk to him. Get in prayer right now and talk to your father. And if you don't know him, talk to him. The same way that if you didn't know my dad, I'd give you a cell phone number. You could call him and talk to him and introduce yourself, have a conversation, talk about World War II or the best bait to use. You could have a great conversation with my dad right now, the same way I'm going to as soon as I stop this video. But that's all I got to do is talk to him. If you don't know the God of the universe, if you don't know the Father that created everything that is waiting for you to talk to him right now, then all you have to do is you just ask him out loud. Jesus said, knock. That's it. He's outside the door knocking. Jesus said, just ask and it will be given. He's out there knocking. Just open the door. That's it. There's no ritual. There's no, some of you may have gotten screwed up in other churches and other religions where they think you have to pass a test and you have to go to a class and you have to say certain things and you have to recite certain, nope. You know who I'm talking to if you're one of those and you've been to one of those before. There is no class. There is no test. There is no something you have to do. All you have to do to know the God of the universe as Father is ask. It doesn't matter what you've done, where you've been, who you've hurt, who hurt you. It doesn't matter anything that you've done up to this point. It doesn't matter. All you say is, God, I want to know you. And he will. He 100% will, because that's all he wants.